RPG Pop Club. RPG Pop Club. RPG Pop Club. Hi, I'm Philip Sokoloff. I'm here with Eric Carter.
Hello.
And Sarah Nicole Carter.
Hello.
This is Ava. Ava's going to be my assistant. You can't hear her, but she's here. We do a podcast called RPG Pop Club, where we take every published Star Trek tabletop RPG adventure and we play it, and then we do a podcast review. Hope you guys can find that at rpgpopclub.com or on your iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Our podcast centers around the adventures, but we know a lot of people are interested in rules. Are you interested in rules, Sarah Nicole?
Nope.
Not really. What about you,
Nope.
Eric?
I am interested in rules in as much as I'm curious how different systems go about simulating combat and encounters, basically. Like how do those simulations work? I love comparing them. So that's how I'm interested in rules.
I think
I
I'm.
don't know about you. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to interrupt. I think I'm interested in rules only if they are making gameplay harder. So when they make us not able to RP or they seem stupid, then I'm interested in changing them.
I just had to explain to someone, my mother-in-law, the very concept of a role-playing game. I'm sure you guys have done this before. And she's like, well, it's like an improv. And I'm like, yes, exactly. It's like an improv. But what the rules do is they help us to know whether things work, whether things succeed, what the character's relative strengths and weaknesses are, and what they can do. So I'm a pretty rules-light guy. If I can get something done in a 32-page rule book rather than a 320-page rule book, I'm a happy camper. And especially with we're doing this RPG over a video, and I just don't want to spend a lot of time flipping through books.
Yeah, I feel very much the
Agreed.
same. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, fantastic. So I set out on this journey of discovery for a Star Trek RPG, which would get the job done for me. A lot of the published rule sets, like many published RPGs, they are hundreds and hundreds of pages. But I found 3 good candidates for just a rules light, old school role-playing game. Here are the 3 different rule sets I found. This is Star Trek Adventure Gaming in the Final Frontier, and it's from 1978. And it's very short, about 30 pages. Starships and Spacemen is also from 1978. It's a little bit more hefty, but still, it's not hundreds of pages, maybe 100 pages. And that's kind of like a generic. It's not an official Star Trek RPG like the other one, but that has its strengths and weaknesses. And this is Where No Man Has Gone Before 2.0. This is from 2009. I'm not sure if you guys can see so well because of the glare, but this is basically something you could just find for free on the internet. And again, maybe
Peek behind the curtain.
40 some pages. Yeah. The base rule set that I settled on is this one, Star Trek Adventure Gaming in the Final Frontier. And there's a couple of reasons for that. It's cool that we're using the first official Star Trek role-playing game. It did come out first, and it's got a lot going for it. If you're just familiar with the 6 stats from D&D, strength, intelligence, dexterity, that sort of stuff, it basically has the same 6 stats, except instead of wisdom, it has luck. And then it gives you a bunch of characters. It starts with like a basic game where it has the characters from the show already all set, some of the stock villains from the show. And it talks about some of the rules and some basic combat. And this is all just combat that you can do like man-to-man combat, not ship-to-ship combat. The cover sort of shows just a planet. And everything that happens in this rulebook is stuff that just happens on a planet. It doesn't really cover flying around through space. So hand-to-hand combat, firing your phaser, punching a guy, all that stuff is covered in here. And then there's two scenarios. The first two adventures that we play. Here's the shuttlecraft crash. You can see 2 pages. And then the slaver ruins. And here's the map for the slaver ruins. And somewhat confusingly, a few pages later is the map for the shuttlecraft crash. So if
Spoilers.
you're confused about which map you're supposed to follow, that's a little tip for you. Then there's a bunch of psionics skills. There's all these different kinds of alien races and monsters that they ran into the show. They're all covered here, and that's a pretty cool thing, right? Because again, even though I'm a rules light guy, you need some stuff, right? You need that list of creatures because there's only so much that you want to like wing, or just sort of fudge and be like, well, you need a little bit of inspiration. A list of monsters, always a plus in my book. And then there's equipment. There's pages and pages of different kinds of equipment that they have in the show. Here's a life support belt, a Kligot. That's a kind of a weapon that they throw in Friday's Child. Hand lasers, hand phasers, all your sort of tricorders and stuff. It's all encyclopedically listed here. Not a lot of like numbers or stats related to it, but just it's all laid out for you. It's very handy to have in a role-playing game. A nice list of equipment. And then there's a list of all the different kinds of weapons that you might want to use, how they work in combat, most importantly, the range of how far they fire, and how much energy they have. So how many times you can fire them. That's basically two pieces of information that you need when you're firing a phaser, and that's cool. Also, the different settings you can have on your phaser: heat, dematerialize, disrupt, and stun. And the rules sort of cover why you would use it one setting rather than the other. So what I really like about this, it's Star Trek to the core. There's not a lot that's made up as far as like stuff that you wouldn't expect to find in Star Trek, but there is a lot of fleshing out just by virtue of making all these lists of stuff.
So I like how they call the GM the mission master.
The mission master, right?
Everybody's got to have their own name for it, right?
Right, because D&D had the dungeon master, so everything had. What is it in Call of Cthulhu, Eric?
It's the keeper.
The keeper of arcane lore or something like that.
That sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. This has two main supplements, which came in a magazine called Different Worlds. This is Different Worlds number 4. It had just a very short supplement, and it's the romance rules.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, this is something that like everyone kind of like thinks is kind of hilarious that it has rules for seducing people, and it's sort of like, this was missing from the rules. It's Star Trek. It has to have this.
Sex and fear, baby.
I always thought that was kind of funny, but what do you think, Sarah Nicole? Has this come in handy in our actual game?
Yep. I think this is probably the most important rules and the rules that I'm most interested in for our campaign. I think it's so fun, and I don't know, it breaks the ice, gets people role playing, and I think it's very true to Star Trek.
And it makes sense too, because it is something that is important. It's a tool that Kirk uses in the show. His charisma is his highest stat, clearly, and he's constantly like, you'll see him like have that grin, and he'll look over at someone, and then he'll get what he wants from them.
Yeah,
that's like super intentional. Anyway, we use this to hilarious effect constantly. We use it almost as our default like rules for when you meet someone, how they react to you, reaction rule.
Which is so fun.
Fun.
It makes so much fun. I don't know. I love it.
It's just this much. You can actually use this in your D&D rules game as well. We basically kind of intuited a similar rule set, I think, in all our years of D&D. But we can more or less just use this as written. You take, you roll a d6, you add your charisma and luck, and then the defender, the person who's you're trying to see if you can seduce them, they add their intellect and luck modifiers. So that's all there is to it. The more hefty supplement is in this one, Different Worlds number 18. And this really helps with character creation because the Where No Man Has Gone Before rulebook doesn't really cover a lot. It gives you the characters, but it doesn't talk about how they grow, how really you generate them, and what the sort of the scope and shape of the campaign is. So that's kind of the most important part. It has this table of ranks here, and we totally use this. You start as an ensign, usually. Cadet, it says NPC only. And as you gain experience points, you gain in rank. And as you gain in rank, you gain in salary, but also you gain the ability to get a cooler ship. So maybe at the very beginning of the campaign, you might be in charge of a shuttle, and as you go, you get a scout, then a destroyer, then a starship, then a dreadnought. And that's just the general idea of how a Star Trek campaign can go according to these rules. And I kind of struggled with that for a while. I was like, well, no, the show just starts on a starship, and you have that starship for the entire campaign. But I eventually came around to this way of thinking of it might be cool to start with a smaller ship and eventually get a larger ship. What do you guys think of that aspect?
I agree, right? One of the cool aspects of playing a long form RPG where you're coming back to the table night after night is that sense of progression. D&D really hits that well. That's one of the many reasons why it strikes the chord. And so it's fun playing through, getting your XP, ranking up. Like I'm not an ensign anymore. I'm a lieutenant, or rising into the rank of captain, and then unlocking that new ship. That's been a lot of fun.
What do you think, Sarah Nicole?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of how to explain how it's worked for us without giving away spoilers. I will say that it's created some interesting character tension in a way
Mm-hmm.
that's fun to play out, when characters make rank at the same time, and then who's going to be in command and why. It's been neat things to have to navigate, and it's added a lot to the campaign and added to the interpersonal relationships that we've developed, which is really cool. So I think it's great.
Yeah, we all started more or less at the same rank, maybe one rank off. I devised just like a roll to see where people started. And that is kind of the weirdest thing about it is that instead of having a captain and a lieutenant commander and a bunch of lieutenants and a whole bunch of ensigns, all the PCs are more or less around the same rank. But I think if you look at the big scheme of things, it's not really a big deal. If you think about like the movies, the original series movies where, you know, by the time of the movies, more or less everyone's a captain. You know what I mean? Sulu's a captain, Scotty's a captain, Spock's a captain. Everyone like more or less becomes a captain over time, and that kind of makes sense in a way. And you know, so what, right? On a real naval ship, you're going to have multiple people of captain rank, and it's just not really the end of the world.
Yeah, but then you have to figure out, who's calling the game. So
Yeah,
it's
well,
kind of
that's
fun.
a big thing to figure out.
Yeah.
It has a whole list of skills, and unlike, say, Call of Cthulhu, where in each skill you have a number, with these skills, you either have it or you don't. And basically, they're saying all Starfleet people are at least acquainted with all aspects of running a ship, but these are like your areas of specialty, so that we can just like as a thing in a role play, be like who should be the one who is set to this particular task, and it'll be the person who has that skill, and they have some sort of a bonus in when they run that skill when they roll for that skill. There's an initial departments table just to see like where people were coming from, and we didn't necessarily assign everybody based on what they rolled here, but you can say, well, Dave's character has a background in engineering, so even though he's like the commander now, he has that like relationship with that department. So it goes through a lot of stuff: how to award experience, um, salary, all the stuff that you would have expected the base rule book to do, but it didn't do. So this is almost like the player's handbook for that rule set. And then here is my favorite thing: the price list. Gotta have it for various reasons. I don't know if you guys can see. Kind kind of got to hold it real still. Yeah, there it is. And this is all the equipment from the rule book, and I think maybe a couple things extra that he threw in here, and how much they're worth. So every time somebody blows up the shuttle, we know how much we have to pay to get another one. It's a lot.
Yeah, John.
So that's
Important.
basically it. It has some cool stuff about generating a planet, what the atmosphere it would be like, what the native population is going to be, and that's all pretty cool. A warp speeds table, which is pretty practical. And that's it for this. Different Worlds number 18. That article is called Beyond the Final Frontier. So the rule set is Adventure Gaming in the Final Frontier, and that's the supplement. So like I said, what the rule set doesn't cover is space travel. And for that, we need to go to Starships and Spacemen. What I like about old school role playing is it doesn't really matter that everything be all connected and tied in. You can more or less take rules a la carte from different rule sets. And Starships and Spacemen, like any rule set, it has character generation, and it's fine. It's instead of 6 abilities, I think there's 8 or 12 different types of abilities. Instead of 3 different branches, there's I think 4 different branches, each with 2 sub branches. So to me, the character creation is a little bit quirky, and not as much as what I would expect as from the other Star Trek rules we looked at. But note here, the same sort of overall structure, the idea that you start as an ensign and progress in rank, and you get a better and better ship. And of course, they name the ship slightly differently. Once you see that, it's more or less got the same idea, and I think probably the other thing got it from here, because the supplement that we looked at was later than this. That's kind of cool that they're speaking the same language. They have the same idea of a campaign. Once you get past all the character creation, it gets into the energy system. So basically, each ship has a number of hit points. Basically, it's called its power pile base, and everything that you do, or all the damage that you sustain, costs you hit points. And when it reaches 0, the ship is kablooey. So that's something that we can all kind of grok, I think, a little bit. Most of us can more or less follow as the game goes on. And it lays out your defensive screens and transporter use, offensive weapons, all the different things you can do, and how it'll affect that energy reading. And then there's different statistics for different ships. We more or less use this for the scout, and this for the destroyer, this for the heavy cruiser, and there's the dreadnought and a freighter. All the types of ships that we use in the campaign, more or less all derived from the technical manual. All the different energy costs. And then once we know how that works, then we can know how battle works. So here's ship-to-ship battle. There's like a combat table here for your range and how much damage is done basically by different types of weapons. So ion torpedoes is what they nickname photon torpedoes. Fireballs are your Romulan plasma torpedoes, and so on. How combat works. And then, even cooler, the idea of when you travel through the galaxy, how that works, and the sort of stuff that you can run into in the galaxy. So we're going to do a number of adventures where we basically just play this, almost like a scenario generator. The different kinds of clouds that you can run into, the different kinds of radiation storms, space mirror, space warp, time warp, space amoeba. I don't know about you guys, space buoy. This stuff gets me so excited. Gravity well, a black hole, and just here's the random encounter matrices. I just love this stuff. And this sort of falls outside the realm of modules of adventure scenarios, which is what we're mostly doing. But which is why we need to make some time to just do this. But I love this. It's basically you can hex crawl the galaxy, and it tells you how to set up star systems and all that stuff too. All kinds of equipment and monsters and stuff. Because this is not an official Star Trek thing, it falls outside that in sort of its ability to come up with some new stuff. And it's all just super fun, just relentlessly fun oriented. So I like this very much. I prefer the other stuff for creating characters, but as far as all the space flight and combat, that slots in just perfectly. Any questions? Comments?
I think you're covering it pretty well. As we've played through these rules, I think they work pretty seamlessly together. I haven't felt like any sort of disjunction between our normal play and then you introduce a new rule set for like space combat, and it seems to work just fine altogether. So
Yeah, it's the genre ties them together, and just the time period it came out was, so early on in the hobby that D&D was the lingua franca, so the apple doesn't usually fall too far from the tree.
mhm.
So that really helps. You can get this from the current publisher, Dan Proctor of Goblinoid Games. He made a new edition of this and sells it print on demand. He also sort of reset this first edition so you can buy that on print on demand. And I think if you email him, he has quite some stock of this original rule book. I bought like 5 of them from him. So check it out. Get yourself a copy before they're all gone. This is a super cool rule book.
You
The other
bought 5
one,
of them? How come we haven't received one in the mail? That's
ha,
super rude, Philip.
you're so right. I totally should send you guys some. Um, this
Rude.
this you can find on eBay, usually around $50, and often they're offered for 100 or more. But I wouldn't pay more than $50 for it. Um, it's it's not like a marvel of an artifact in and of itself. It's just a good, solid, playable game. Now, I will also say that with regard to the FASA rules, we play a lot of FASA modules, and uh, I haven't really read the rule set, even though we've played like 17 modules for it. The rule set doesn't seem to matter. You can, like I said, the lingua franca is Star Trek itself and just kind of role playing sense. So I guess kind of a smug knowledge about that. that I didn't have to read the 300-page rule book or any of the supplements that they came out with. A big old Klingon supplement. We played the Klingon modules without reading the supplement. Traders and Merchant Princes. Kind of skimmed it. Starfleet Intelligence Manual. Didn't seem to matter. I don't need the
and
rules. I just need the adventures.
and now FASA was the 1980 rule
Yeah,
set.
1983.
Okay,
That
do you
was
happen
like
to have
after
that?
after Wrath of Khan came out.
Ah,
Then they had to, do a bunch of tie-in products. So,
When
of
people
course,
suddenly thought Star Trek was cool.
yeah.
Rude.
So that has dozens and dozens and dozens of modules, which is a lot of the ones that we're playing at this point because we're going through chronologically. But yeah, this, like I said, it came out in 2009, and it's just something that you can find for free in a PDF on the internet. I printed it out just for your enjoyment. Um, and it more or less covers a lot of the same ground as the first one. You can create characters. There's 3 different stats or 4 different stats instead of 6: strength, dexterity, intelligence, charisma. And you can make humans or Andorians or Vulcans or Tellarites, more or less like all the other rules. The classes are red shirt, blue shirt, and yellow shirt. So this has a little bit more of a jokey atmosphere to it. Um, like it's sort of internalized the original series, and ripped shirt is a name of an ability. Ripped shirt. Um, just not something I would think of when I was designing an RPG. Manly chest or long legs or short skirt. Life of Riley, Kevin Riley from the original series. It's he's dead Jim. Like it's just all full of like those inside references. And unfortunately, it doesn't. It kind of hand waves a lot of mechanics of the game because it's just more like it's a little too narrativist for my taste. I don't know if narrativist is the word, but a little too improv-y, where it doesn't really have a list of equipment and how they work. It's just kind of like that's not the point. The point is just I shoot it and it takes care of that. This is probably right up your alley, Sarah Nicole. This would probably be your favorite, honestly.
I mean, it's everything you're saying sounds like pluses in my book.
I love I love this, and like I said, it was definitely in the running, and it's just a matter of, I was the most comfortable with the other one, and I felt it covered the best, the stuff that I want to cover. But you can see again, the levels are the ranks, and so it's talking the same sort of language. The actions have like beam over the landing party, fire phasers.
Do you think this
That's
might
all
be
fun
something better for somebody who wanted to play it casually or like do a one-off night and add a Star Trek adventure in?
for a one-off, absolutely, or a short campaign. I think it's just hand wavy enough. Um, it has the same sort of ships: the Constitution class, the Dreadnought, the Hermes class scout. So again, it's speaking the same language. It's relentlessly original series based, which again is similar to all the old ones, which are actually vintage. And there's this cool section called Mysterious Alien Devices. There's all kinds of, planet generation and stuff, but this is particularly fun. The size of it, what it does, you roll for everything.
That sounds
Um,
familiar.
yeah. So this we actually use in our role playing game along with the life path generator. The life path generator is from here as well, and we talked about that extensively in our first episode.
Yeah.
But yeah, the whole
Great.
idea of generating your character's history. Um, and so one of the things that can happen in your backstory is that you may have come across a mysterious alien device. So that's fun. Yeah. One of the hilarious things about this, it has this TV ratings section. So if you roll at the end of your game to see how well your audience received your episode, and some of them are like, the show's too confusing. Add a narrator, add a monkey sidekick. The show's not British enough. The show's too British. Make it more French. You know,
This
just
is
funny,
less.
jokey stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say that's less of a we're playing in the Star Trek universe and more we are putting on an episode of Star Trek
Yeah, there is that meta sort of jokiness to it,
So this
for
is like a
sure.
Galaxy Quest RPG.
kind of.
Huh.
You can see over
I'm
here, like space
I'm
hippies, space Nazis, space Romans, space Vikings. These are all stuff that you would see in Star Trek, but
Space
it's
Nazis, yeah.
taking it like less seriously and being like, yes, this is what Star Trek is about, and I kind of agree on some level, but it's just that modern look back at Star Trek, the original series, and some of the funny things that we think about it, and not really Star Trek, the original series, on its own terms. I don't think in those days the producers would have necessarily thought of it as like just complete schlock, but there's a place for this approach. So this is a lot of fun. You can just Google Where No Man Has Gone Before 2.0. It's based on the Microlight 20 rules, which is just a kind of a simplified Dungeons and Dragons rule set. But you don't need that for this. This is pretty self-contained. Good stuff. And that's where we get all our stuff.
I love it. It's great to see what's
Cool.
going on behind the curtain.
pull back the veil.
Another reason I chose to go with this set is I did look at Star Trek Adventures, which is the 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 rule set which is in print right now, and it has a not really an old school approach, but I thought that some of the when I looked at the modules for it, it seemed like I could use these rules for it, and it would translate over pretty well. Just the idea of rolling a check based on your department, so like the engineer rolls a certain kind of check to see if he can succeed in an engineering task. And that's covered just fine by these rules, I thought. And when converting the FASO modules use all the character stats have a 1 through 99 range instead of the 1 through 20 range like you would see in here. And so it's a pretty simple conversion, more or less a division by 5 of all the stats. I made a table for that, and then they translate over pretty well. The like a 99 intelligence works out as a 19 intelligence, and I think like Spock has a 20 intelligence by those rules, and that more or less seems right to me. So
Agreed.
there the translation works pretty easily.
Awesome.
Well, that's our video.
Yeah.
Please check out our podcast, and we'll see you guys there.
That
Yay!
podcast is
Oh.
rpgpopclub.com.
That's right.
It's .com.
On Friday night, we always got the gang together. We always said, save or let die.
You know you did, you know you did, you know you did.
But if your love of all pop culture gives you a thrill, head on down to the pub for RPG Pop Club. RPG Pop Club. RPG Pop Club.